Fried dumplings are great, and for the longest while I thought that nut dumplings were just regular dumplings with extra unnecessary steps, but after making these, I'm thinking differently. Hey, I'm Nick, and today let's make this very delicious, very essential Jamaican breakfast item. If you have problems getting soft dumplings, this video is definitely for you. As a bonus, I'm going to show you how I make the best, most satisfying shakeout. Let's get right into it. The nut dumpling recipe is the same as my regular dumpling recipe. I updated it with weights to make it easier to replicate. It only requires 6 easy ingredients, but you could get away with as little as 3 or 4. To 1 pound or 16 ounces of all-purpose flour, add 1 tablespoon of sugar. Brown or white doesn't really matter. Next, add 1.5 ounce or about 2 tablespoons cold diced butter. This is salted. Half teaspoon salt. A few viewers have told me that half teaspoon is not enough, but it's okay for me, but you could simply up this to 1 teaspoon, especially if you're using unsalted butter. Next, add the leavener. 1 tablespoon baking powder. Give all those ingredients a good mix to distribute them evenly. Next, add 9 ounces of whole milk. This could be water or a combination at the same weight, but milk is going to give me a richer fried dumpling with a vibrant golden brown crust. Next, simply knead until the dough comes together. Soften or melted butter works, but cold butter gives the dumpling a slightly flaky, chewy texture, which I really like. To get the flakiest dumplings, you could use cold liquids in addition to the cold butter and rest the dough in the fridge. This does not require a lot of upfront kneading, just knead until the flour is hydrated and everything comes together nicely. For me, that usually just takes about 3 or 4 minutes. The next step is probably the most important for perfect fried dumpling with great taste and texture. The dough will still be rough at this stage. You could knead it more to make it smooth, but the next step also helps with that. Give that a wrap, and that next step is resting. A good 10 to 15 minutes is enough. Resting relaxes the dough, making it easier to work. It also develops gluten and makes it much more smooth. That will still look rough, but if you tug on the dough, you can see that it's a lot more stretchy. Give that a few folds and you will notice how smooth it gets. Yup, resting does all that. Great. Now we can shape the dumplings. I just have a baking tray lined with wax paper so they don't stick, but you could also use a bit of flour. Shaping is actually really easy. Grab a piece of the dough and give it a palm roll. Try to keep it at even thickness. Next, simply make a knot. Very nice. The only time I had any trouble making the knots was when the palm rolled noodle dumplings was not long enough. You kinda have to feel out what works for you with the first 2 to 3 dumplings. After that, you will intuitively know the right length, thickness and amount of dough you need to make a beautiful knot. I'm pretty sure you could make more complicated shapes and knots. It would be really interesting to see those shapes, but for me, simple does it. All that rolling and knotting will tighten up the dumplings, so we can just let them rest for another 5 minutes. I have heated some oil on medium-low heat. I usually use enough oil for a deep fry as they cook and brown more evenly. You want a thick, heavy pot for this. A thick pot holds onto heat really well and transfers it more evenly and doesn't suffer from huge temperature shocks. You want good temperature control with fried dumplings. They should brown and cook evenly at the same time. If it's too cold, they will soak up oil. If it's too hot, they brown or burn before cooking right through. There are many strategies to deal with this. My favorite is to start them out a bit slow, and then the last minute after I'm certain they are cooked through and I'm ready to remove them, I crank the heat up a bit to brown them quickly. That's not actually what I did here though. I just left the pot on medium low heat and it cooked and browned perfectly. And that's a perfectly fried nut dumpling. Earlier I mentioned how I used to think this was unnecessary, but I've come to change my mind. A nut dumpling is actually very dynamic. It has a wider range of textures in just one dumpling. Eating one is more of an experience than just a regular ball of fried dough. Yup, that's the texture I love in my dumpling. Those are very beautiful, but we are not done yet. Next, let's make one of my favorite things to have with fried dumplings. This Jamaican favorite is known by many names. Tin boom, shake out, flash out, dirty gal. Just leave the ones I missed in the comments below, but yeah, mackerel in tomato sauce is one of those essential parts of our breakfast menu. I'm going to cook this up with a few veggies. You really don't need to do the most. Little hot pepper and onion is enough to take tin mackerel to the next level, but I'm going to show you my favorite way to have this. Start with a good splash of oil. Add about one sliced onion. That onion was extra big. About a teaspoon of chopped garlic. Little bit of fresh thyme. 2 stalks of scallion. I'm using whites only because I save the greens for garnish. 1 whole slice scotchy. That's a lot of scotch bonnet pepper and I really don't expect anyone to make this with this much pepper, so reduce the amount to fit your taste. But for me, I want to really feel the heat with this dish. Next, saute after that to build some flavor. You don't have to brown the seasonings, just get a good saute until it becomes fragrant. As I mentioned before, you could probably just use onion and hot pepper to cook this up, and that's actually how I do it most of the time. It's still very delicious. Next, add some sliced sweet pepper. I add sweet pepper last because the high water content makes for a less flavorful saute. Next, shake out or flash out all the contents of the can of mackerel. This is about 2 of the smaller tins of mackerel. Adding a little bit of water to the can helps to get out the last bit of stubborn tomato sauce. It also thins the sauce out a bit. Just don't add too much water to kill the flavors in the pot. Alright, that's almost done. The final step is to season generously with black pepper. Black pepper flavor in tin mackerel kicks it up a notch. Season with salt if needed, but this did not need it. That is it. This is the perfect food for stormy weather, which at the time of making this video I was experiencing. This was 2 days before Hurricane Beryl hit, but I was still getting some wind and rain. And that's the assembled plate. I'm going to top that off with the scallion greens I saved. I also got some breadfruit which I fried. I'm working on a roast breadfruit video, so look out for that, but that's one very solid, very sexy Jamaican breakfast. One thing these videos can't do is to let you smell the smells, and imagination does not help very much. Let me take a moment to give my sympathies to everyone who was affected by Hurricane Beryl. Whether that's water or light issues, from what I have seen, Beryl mostly damaged infrastructure, which, as bad as that might be, is still replaceable and rebuildable, so we still have something left to be thankful for. I hope everyone has a speedy recovery and stay safe. Catch you in the next one.